Hello all. In today's video, I want to talk about the 3 best value characters in HSR. Now, to most people, 2 of these picks are going to be obvious, and maybe one of them won't be, but for meta players, they'd probably expect this one as well, right? Unfortunately, there isn't really much you can do to really, subvert expectations when it comes to these HSR lists, because it's usually quite clear to most people just who exactly has the highest value in the current state of the game, right? So I want to start off with the more obvious ones, and the most obvious one. It's Tribby, right? There's nothing you can do to escape her. Tribby is incredibly valuable. Now, personally, this is a spoiler for the next pick that I'm going to talk about. I actually have Sunday as a higher value support than Tribby. You know what I'm saying? Calm down, guys, calm down, right? I know that's, crazy to some people, but I do think Sunday is more irreplaceable in a lot of teams, and he has a lot less competition compared to the likes of a Tribby, right? Also, everything else that he adds. But this isn't the Sunday, part of this. This is the Tribby part. Tribby is incredibly strong. She is a Harmony who gives 2 of the rarest buffs in the game, well, aside from true damage, being Res Pen and Vulnerability. And she basically takes what Robin does to the next level. Now, yes, Robin has the more consistent and better action advance, but because of Tribby being able to get ult, to be honest, quite easily, she basically has 100% uptime on her ult, leading to the vulnerability field always being up. And this means you get 24% res pen, and I believe it's like 30% vulnerability alongside the ult field. And for those who don't know, 24% res pen is quite consistently a near 30% damage increase in most case scenarios. And you'd see an even bigger damage increase if you're using a Tribby for your DPS in a element weak situation, right? So, an incredibly strong Harmony who can take very good advantage of DDD if you have that. On my main account, I actually just got a DDD copy off the standard banner, which is huge. So, I now have an S4 DDD. If I had Tribby, incredible value, right? In fact, I should have gone for Tribby on my main account instead of Phanon, because then I'd be able to fully complete my E2S1 My Day team. However, I like Phanon too much, so I'm kind of ignoring meta just for him, right? So, Tribby adds immense value. I mean, there is this whole, hot topic recently about wheelchair, right? Hyacine and Tribby duo is incredibly powerful, not only because of how strong their buffing capabilities are, but because of how well they synergize with each other, and both of them kind of being sub DPSs in their own right, to the point where they sometimes out DPS the actual main DPS on the team. And this is more commonly seen by version 1 and version 2 DPSs just straight up being outdone by the Hyacine Tribby combo and being completely carried by it. So value like that is incredibly high. Not only do you get those amazing buffs that are quite rare yet powerful, you also get very good sub DPS from Tribby that can allow you or help your main DPS, clear a few cycles faster, right? I don't need to get into any more specifics about Tribby. She literally works for everything, right? She is kind of like an upgraded Ruan Mei, but with better buffs. She works for literally everything, every comp, everyone, and to add on to it, she has currently the most broken E1 in the entirety of the game. 24% of the damage dealt by anyone on the team will be stacked onto the highest HP mob on field. This becomes stronger when used with AoE or blast DPSs and when there are multiple mobs on field. Because let's say, for example, you are a Herda main, right? And one enhanced skill from Herda against Flame Reaver does 15% damage to him, and then the rest of the damage is spread to the clones with a bit of overkill. Well, if you have E1 Tribby, then your single target damage will now do more than double to Flame Reaver. So you will go from hitting him for 15% to hitting him for 30% plus, because of there being 5 enemies on field. It's 24% damage taken from each mob, all added together 5 times, and then you stack it onto the highest HP mob on field, which will almost always be the actual boss, right? It won't always be necessarily this powerful. However, it is still incredibly powerful nonetheless, even outside of its best case scenarios, right? Now we move on from Tribby, and we have, no surprise, as mentioned in the beginning of the video, Sunday. Sunday is so incredibly universal. The reason I put Tribby first above Sunday, even though I personally think Sunday is the better support, is because Tribby has her own damage output, right? The ability to have your own damage output, at least currently, is very important. However, this will be something that falls off going into the future, right? For example, Aventurine's follow-ups that did 30 to 40k used to be considered basically sub DPS tier back when bosses had like 1 million HP max. Now that we have bosses like cough cough, spoiler alert, be warned, Lygus with over 10 million HP, it isn't anything, right? It's like a drop in an ocean. So even though Tribby's current, damage output, sub DPS numbers aren't that bad, and they for sure contribute to being able to clear endgame, I really just wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if a year or two from now her sub DPS is considered minuscule and it doesn't really help in clearing in the slightest, right? So this doesn't take away from Tribby's value, it just makes Sunday a little more future proof. And at the end of the day, Sunday just in general is completely busted. Now I will be talking about Sunday with Lycone here. Without Lycone, he's SP neutral. With Lycone though, he is SP positive, more so than an E0 S0 Sparkle. If Sparkle isn't using Sunday's Lycone, basically he's more SP positive, right? But if you do use Sunday's Lycone on Sparkle, she is slightly more SP positive, but usually not worth ever running over Sunday in most comps, because Sunday gives something huge towards, the relic min-maxers, which is 20% crit rate on skill. Massively underrated buff that really helps with not needing to get as many crit rate rolls on your relics and being able to focus on like attack percent or crit damage or speed, right? He, on top of this, he as well gives energy generation. I believe on his ult he gives 20% energy generation towards whoever he uses his ult on, and I believe the minimum amount of energy you can get total is 40 energy from his ult. So if you have a character that has less than 200 energy, like Anoxa I believe, you will still get more than 20% because the minimum you can receive is 40. So for low energy, DPSs, it's even more valuable there, right? So he gives you ER generation. He's more skill point positive than Sparkle with Light Cone. He gives you 20% crit rate. He gives you a lot of damage boost and crit damage. And to add on top of this, with the current leaks we have of Dan Heng SP possibly being free and him putting a summon on allies, this would even further increase Sunday's value for quite a few teams, namely the ones outside of HP scalers, because you'd usually just run Hyacine in the HP scaling ones and then run Dan Heng in the other ones. So if Dan Heng puts a summon onto your DPS, Sunday will now give 50% more damage boost to that DPS because they have a summon on them, which is incredibly valuable, right? Now, depending on your DPS and your comp, damage boost obviously differentiates in how much it exactly increases your DPS's damage. Just as anything in this game, if you're oversaturating on something a lot, then 50% might not make a big difference. But if you don't have that much damage boost, then 50% can actually be a very noticeable increase in your DPS's damage output. So Sunday will get even better value when Dan Heng SP comes around, which is insane to think, right? Sunday is an insanely versatile option for so many characters in this game, and usually his only competition is Bronya, right? An E1S1 or an E2S1 Bronya still holds incredible value. However, in my opinion, most people probably don't have E1S1 or E2S1 Bronya, so they'd also prefer the comfort of Sunday that he provides with the crit rate, with the ER gen, with the SP positivity, compared to even a Bronya, where even with E1, it can be very RNG sometimes, right? Sunday is going crazy currently, right? He is best in slot for most of the HP scalers, being My Day, Blade, and Jingliu. He is best in slot for a lot of the older version 2 DPSs, such as Boot Hill. He is best in slot for as well as Yun Li. He is as well best in slots for Dill, although that's not version 2, right? He's best in slot for Jing Yuan. He's best in slot for My Day. He's best in slot for Aglaya. He is best in slot for Anaxa. He is the second best in slot behind RMC for Cassie. And is there another DPS I'm forgetting? Oh, he is the second best in slot if you run Hyper Carry Herda. If you don't care about Hyper Carry Herda, obviously Tribby is better and you go for Anaxa. But most people run Hyper Carry Herda for low cost 0 cycles. So that is for sure, you know, a secondary option if your RMC is on another team, right? She is best in slot for, he is best in slot for Saber. He is best in slot for Phaedon, and he is a second best in slot option as well for Archer, right? So as you can see, holy fuck, right? I just went through a massive list of characters who have this guy as like a top 2 support for him, and most of them have him at top 1. And I remember Sunday was one of the first characters that I told people, pull now, right? Pull now so that you can get his Lycone on the rerun. So many people were scared of us getting another Sparkle situation, which I can understand. However, the value that Sunday gave was just incredible, right? Absolutely incredible. And one of the few characters to this day that I really advocated people pull for and even go for Lycone or Eidolon investment on, right? So that's enough Sunday Glaze. Let's get into the third, character here. And the third character I'll be choosing for best value will be a DPS. And yes, it will be Anoxa. Now, I was really, thinking about this because it was between Anoxa and Cassie for me. No, Phanon isn't being considered here because even though he is quite good in Sustainless, I'm not considering Sustainless, and current Phanon sustain performance is absolutely abysmal, right? But Anoxa and Casterus, the reason I gave the edge to Anoxa is because while yes, Casterus is stronger than Anoxa, it is that Anoxa is way better at utilizing basically any supports in this game. Like, Anoxa can take full advantage of Ting Yun and RMC, and just those two supports alone can easily carry him through clearing endgame, simply because of how universal his kit is. He loves attack, he loves ER gen, he loves damage boost. He can use basically anything from anyone. So he is like the cheapest DPS if we're talking team wise, while also performing universally amazing. This guy is an absolute APOC beast. And an MOC, in my opinion, even though Pride 1 has him currently ranked as T0.5, he should be T0. His E0S0 and his E0S1 performance is really, really strong. And in fact, he's one of the few characters in this game where his 4-star free-to-play Lycone isn't actually all that much worse compared to the signature. I think the signature is on average around 20% better. So honestly, a massive W for the non-Lycone pullers. He can use any support. He can work in any endgame mode because of the way he works. He's AoE yet bounce. So in full AoE situations, he can still deal out some decent damage. He can get double skills. And in single target situations, he can proc 5 or 6 hits or whatever it is on single target and do near the same damage he would do on AoE. He is so fucking good, so versatile, so cheap that there was no way I could put Cassie over him. Even though I will say best in slot team for best in slot team, for sure, Cassie is stronger. However, for what this guy gives you at the low cost he does, it's just unbeatable in the game currently, right? I'd say the second most comparable is Herda. However, even Herda is currently not performing as well as an Anoxa if we talk about not having their best in slot supports, because Herda is mainly targeted towards AoE content. So recently, with a lot of destruction characters releasing, they are releasing blast content and single target focus content. So Herda can still clear, don't get me wrong, but it just isn't on the same level of Anoxa. I've seen so many showcases of Anoxa and APOC and MOC, not so much in Pure Fiction recently because I don't really look at that, right? Clearing Pure Fiction is a breeze for many. However, I've been seeing a lot of these showcases, and Anoxa quite consistently has some of the best low-cost zero cycles or just low-cost runs even with sustain in general, right? I'd say until Archer releases, there isn't going to be a non-HP scaler who clears endgame with sustain as well as Anoxa does, right? So that's all I have to say. Those are my top 3 value picks of characters in this game currently. It is Sunday and Tribby for the supports, and in my opinion, no one else really compares. And then it's also Anoxa for the DPS. Now, I will say, don't take this video as I'm gonna instantly pull Tribby, I'm gonna instantly pull Sunday thing, right? Because do keep in mind Cyrene is on the horizon. Cyrene should release in 3.7, so 3 patches away. Yes, I understand that's pretty far away, so if you can save for her nonetheless, then go ahead and still pull Sunday or Tribby if you really want to. However, Cyrene might have a very broken Eidolon investment similar to Tribby, if not better, simply because of how lore important she is and how HSR treats their lore important characters. And she should be the RMC upgraded, the next remembrance support that likely gives true damage, possibly action advance, and has their own like sub DPS output similar to Tribby. So if there's anyone who can be on the same level as Tribby as an AoE buffer, if not better, in my opinion, it would be Cyrene. Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great night. And peace out.